Hey guys, LevelCap here, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Gaming, the news show where we cover all things FPS. If a story in particular interests you, be sure to check the video description for all links to the news I'm covering today. Now, although we didn't have any big news from Battlefield this week, I thought I would start things off by covering some of the top user suggestions for additions or changes for Battlefield 1. This is from my patch wishlist video where I asked everyone to let me know in the comments what they wanted to see changed for Battlefield 1, and we got some pretty interesting suggestions. Now, one of the most popular subjects for the feedback was being able to skip the revive system. Some people like it, some people don't like it. Basically, the problem is that a lot of players are spawning into the game, they're able to skip their revive when they die, and then medics have no chance of reviving them. This system sort of solves the issue that in Battlefield 4 you could be changing your loadout or in the menu system, and then somebody would revive you and you wouldn't actually quite be ready for combat. So it was sort of a little bit of a jostle there, and this system does fix that, but it creates its own problem in that most medics now are running to revive people where they should have plenty of time to revive them, and that person skips the revive, goes back to the menu, costs your team a ticket, and basically loses them an unnecessary death. It's frustrating for medics, and novice players who don't understand what's going on have no idea that they could have been revived and right back in the action. The next big community desired change is the ability to edit your loadouts from the main menu. Now, I didn't mention this in the video because DICE has already stated that they are working on this. Apparently this feature had been in the game before launch, but it was buggy, so they disabled it till they could fix it. Hopefully this next patch coming up is going to fix it, but at the moment the only way to change your loadout out of game is with a companion app, which nobody is going to use. And anyway, it kind of resets a lot of your save presets, so it's more of a hindrance than it actually is a benefit. Now, a huge amount of people in the comments were suggesting that there should be more guns in the game. And although I do agree to a certain extent that there should be a little bit more guns, I think more importantly, DICE should balance out a lot of the guns that are already in the game, because there's just many guns right now, especially the machine guns, that I'm just not even going to consider using because I think they perform so poorly. So if DICE balances their weapons a little bit better, makes many of the underperforming weapons better, I think people feel like they have more variety, and that would certainly be an easier and a better step rather than just flooding the game with a whole bunch of new weapons before balancing the current ones. Another good suggestion was increasing the ticket count for TDM. A lot of these smaller game modes go unnoticed because not as many people play them as they do Conquest or Operations, but apparently 100 tickets just isn't good enough to have a good warm-up game or a good round of team deathmatch, and especially with the elite classes, they can make those games go insanely fast. Now, the last community suggestion I wanted to bring up is the mantle system in the game. Mantling over walls, jumping over things. Battlefield 1 lets you mantle over walls that are a good 1 to 2 feet taller than you, but if you run into some random rubble, good luck. It seems to happen a lot on destroyed walls, but also happens on static terrain. There's just a lot of bugginess to the mantle system currently. There's also a lot of invisible walls that seem to occur around weird destroyed objects as well. If you're sniping a lot, you'll notice your shots just hitting invisible objects. Alright, now moving on from Battlefield, our first bit of news this week is Titanfall 2's first major balance patch went live. The biggest change was made to the map hack, which now pulses enemy locations instead of showing them constantly. There are also changes made to the Legion and Tone Titans as well, but what those changes are isn't listed, and that's actually by developer choice. Respawn decided to take a different approach to patch notes with Titanfall 2. Basically, they're keeping them as general as possible to avoid players going in with predetermined expectations that might bias their feedback. A lot of times devs will change the way something works for the better, but players who are used to the way things were complain without actually taking the time to understand how the changes benefit them and the game. But on the other hand, having to figure out what changed about a game from patch to patch is kind of frustrating. For instance, if devs lowered the damage on a gun so that it goes from 3 shots to kill to 4 shots to kill, you might be playing and wondering why you're doing so poorly with a gun you normally do great with. And rather than realizing that the gun itself has been nerfed, people might start blaming other factors of the game. And basically, I think this is a immature response from Respawn. There's plenty of bad community feedback that comes to devs all the time. It's their job to sort of sort it out, but the less information you give the community, the worse the feedback's going to be, or even more misguided the feedback will be. Yeah, Respawn told the community that they slowed down the speed of the pilots, even though it was very minimal compared to the previous game, and a lot of the complaints and feedback was that the game felt too slow by comparison, even though technically it wasn't. So Respawn's job as developers is to understand, why does the community feel like the game is slower? Does it have to do with map design, the gadgets we have available, other mechanics in the game that make it feel slower? And even so, if it does feel slower, should we change it, even though there seems to be a bit of a community outcry? Sometimes it's not always great to listen to the community that's complaining, because often they can represent the minority of the player base. So I think devs really just need to suck it up, give the community the information, and learn how to understand what is good and bad feedback. Even if the majority of the feedback wants something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's good. Alright, moving on. Dishonored 2 was released this week, and while the initial reviews have been very positive, players have noticed several issues on all platforms. The biggest issue seems to be spotty performance. In some areas, the game will run at 60 FPS or higher with no problem, but if you look somewhere else or move around, it will seemingly drop for no reason. Players have discovered that the game sets its process priority to low randomly during the gameplay on PC, manually setting it to high boost FPS, but the game eventually sets it back to low by itself. There are ways to force the setting to stay on high, but hopefully Bethesda will be issuing a patch to address this issue before plaguing everyone soon. They've stated that they are aware of most of the issues and are working to address them as quickly as possible. People that bought Infinite Warfare on the Windows Store are being issued refunds thanks to a lack of cross-platform play between it and the Steam version of the game. Not being able to play with Steam users has turned Infinite Warfare into a ghost town game, and the Microsoft Store is issuing refunds to users because of it. Microsoft said cross-play is possible, but Activision opted to not include it. Considering Infinite Warfare isn't even in the top 10 best sellers list on Steam less than a week after its release, I'd say Activision better get on adding cross-play support ASAP. Then again, Activision has been pretty notorious about shitting on the PC community with all of their COD releases, so I don't have a lot of faith in that. One bright spot of news for the Windows Store users is that Microsoft added an offline option for games on the platform late last month. Unfortunately, it has some pretty hefty limitations. Firstly, it only works for one PC per account, so if you have multiple PCs, you have to pick which one will work in offline mode. Secondly, you can only change which PC is your offline PC 3 times per year. I feel like someone at Microsoft missed the memo about this being a dumb way of doing things. Steam, Origin, and Uplay all have easy to use offline modes that work on all of your PCs and don't require users to pick the one they want offline capable. Trying to compete with the other platforms out there when you're forcing users through a flaming hoop act just to play offline isn't going to work for you. I feel like the average Microsoft Store user has a much better concept of what the Microsoft Store policy should be than the actual policy makers. This is a problem. I mean, it's been a joke so far. The limited Halo 5 release on PC was like a joke. It was impossible to install. The mouse input was terrible. Microsoft, you're making yourself an embarrassment to PC gaming. You gotta fix this shit and fix it soon. Alright, now moving on to our last bit of news, Rainbow Six Siege is free to play this weekend on PC and PS4, as well as being on sale for $25 on Steam. If you don't already own this game, it's a great deal, especially with the DLC launching this coming week. The Season Pass isn't on sale though, so you'll still have to pay full price if you want the DLC. That being said, every map that's coming out for this game in the future is going to be 100% free, and if you don't want to pay for the DLC, you can still play the game a lot to earn in-game credits to unlock the new DLC operators. This is probably one of the best DLC systems I've seen for any game, and it's why the Rainbow Six Siege player base is going strong. Hopefully other developers can use Rainbow Six Siege as an example for their games going forward. I know many of them already have. Titanfall 2 has a great DLC policy. Battlefield, however, has taken a while to get on board. Who knows, maybe we'll have to wait for the next Battlefield game before they start making the maps free for everyone. And that pretty much wraps it up for today's episode of This Week in Gaming. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Stick around for more Battlefield coverage and other FPS news, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.